I never thought that stepping into the Amazon rainforest would turn into a fight for survival. The moment I crossed the threshold into the dense wilderness, the air shifted. It was thick and humid, wrapping around me like a heavy blanket. Each breath felt charged, as if the forest itself held its breath, watching me intrude upon its domain. The sunlight barely penetrated the towering canopy above, creating a mosaic of light and shadow on the forest floor. Vivid greens surrounded me, each leaf glistening with moisture, but beneath that beauty, an unsettling silence loomed. The chirping of birds and rustling of small creatures were absent, replaced by an eerie stillness that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I adjusted my backpack, feeling the weight of my equipment pressing against me, a reminder of my purpose. As a forest ranger, I had always revered nature, believing I understood its rhythms and secrets. But now, standing amidst the colossal trees, I felt like a mere visitor in a world that thrived without me. With each step deeper into the forest, the ground squelched beneath my boots, the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves filling my nostrils. The jungle was alive, pulsating with energy, yet it felt hostile. Every creak of a branch or rustle in the underbrush sent my heart racing. I quickened my pace, but the feeling of being watched intensified, gnawing at my resolve. Suddenly, a sharp noise shattered the silence, a branch snapping nearby. My pulse quickened, and I froze. The sound could have been anything, a deer, a snake, or something far more sinister. I scanned the surroundings, every muscle in my body tensed, ready to spring into action. The forest shifted around me, shadows dancing in the periphery, taunting me with their unpredictability. I pressed on, the underbrush growing thicker, almost as if it were trying to entangle me. The path I had followed began to fade, and I realized I had ventured off the familiar trail. Panic surged within me, a primal instinct urging me to flee, but I fought against it, reminding myself that I was a ranger. I belonged here. The sunlight continued to fade, swallowed by the encroaching foliage. I stumbled upon a clearing, a momentary respite from the oppressive greenery, but even here, the atmosphere was charged. The air felt electric, as if the forest were alive, thrumming with secrets waiting to be uncovered. The vibrant colors around me seemed to pulse with an ominous energy, and I felt the weight of something unseen pressing down on my shoulders. As I caught my breath, I noticed something glimmering in the underbrush. Curiosity replaced fear momentarily, and I approached cautiously. It was an old, rusted compass, its needle spinning wildly. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands, and a chill ran down my spine. How could a compass be here, abandoned in the depths of the jungle? It felt like a sign, a warning, or perhaps an invitation to delve deeper into the unknown. Ignoring the unease creeping along my spine, I pocketed the compass and took a deep breath, pushing the fear aside. I needed to find my way back, but the forest seemed determined to keep me within its grasp. As I turned to retrace my steps, I heard a low growl, a deep, throaty sound that vibrated through the air. My heart dropped, and dread coiled in my stomach. I spun around, my eyes scanning the shadows. Nothing, just the whispering leaves and the distant call of unseen creatures. But that growl resonated in my mind, an echo that wouldn't fade. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to run, but my body betrayed me, frozen in place as I awaited the next sound. Suddenly, the underbrush rustled violently, and I caught a glimpse of movement. A dark shape darted between the trees too, fast for me to discern its form. My breath quickened, the forest closing in around me as I fought against the rising tide of panic. I needed to escape, to find the safety of the trail, but the very ground seemed to conspire against me, roots and vines tangling at my feet. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the clearing, partially obscured by the foliage. My heart raced, a mixture of fear and curiosity pulling me closer. It was a woman, her features sharp and wild, hair tangled with leaves and dirt. She seemed both part of the forest and entirely separate from it. Her presence commanding yet unsettling. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice shaky but determined. She stepped forward, her eyes glinting with a feral intensity. "You shouldn't be here," she warned, her voice low and melodic, but laced with an undertone of threat. "The forest doesn't take kindly to intruders." I took a cautious step back, the compass in my pocket feeling heavier now. "I'm a forest ranger. I have a right to be here." Her laugh was sharp, echoing through the trees like the crack of thunder. "Rights mean nothing to the jungle. It has its own laws, and it will decide your fate." The ground beneath me trembled slightly, as if the forest itself were responding to her words. I felt a rush of adrenaline, a primal urge to flee, but I stood my ground, pushing back against the rising tide of fear. "What do you mean?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady. "The forest is alive," she replied, stepping closer, her gaze piercing through me. "It watches, it waits. You think you understand its beauty, but you don't know its darkness." I swallowed hard, her words sinking in. The beauty of the Amazon had always captivated me, but I was beginning to realize that it held secrets far more terrifying than I could have imagined. The sounds of the jungle became louder, a symphony of life intertwined, with an underlying threat. Suddenly, there was a rustle behind me, and I turned to see a shadow darting between the trees. My heart raced again, and I felt the weight of the woman's gaze on my back, her presence a constant reminder of the danger that lurked within the jungle. "Run," she urged, but I hesitated, torn between fear and the desire to uncover the truth. Before I could decide, a growl erupted from the underbrush, closer this time, and the ground continued to tremble. I felt the panic rise within me, a primal instinct screaming for me to escape. But as I turned to flee, the shadows closed in around me, and I realized that the forest was not just a backdrop. It was a living entity, one that would not let me go easily. With every step I took, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. I had come to explore the wonders of the Amazon, but now I was confronted with its terrifying reality. The beauty I had once revered felt like a mask hiding something far more sinister. My heart raced as I plunged deeper into the wilderness, the sounds of the jungle morphing into a cacophony of chaos. As I ran, the shadows danced around me, whispering secrets and threats in a language I could not understand. I was lost, not just in the forest, but in the realization that I had underestimated this place. The jungle was both a paradise and a nightmare, and I was caught in its web. As I stumbled through the thick underbrush, the forest transformed into a labyrinth of shadows and sounds. The woman from the clearing, who had warned me of the jungle's dangers, lingered in my mind. She was fierce, or at least she seemed to be, but there was a vulnerability in her eyes that hinted at a deeper story. I couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just a protector of the forest, but perhaps a captive of it as well. Her warnings echoed in my mind, forcing me to confront my own naivety. I had come to the Amazon seeking adventure, but what I found was a world that demanded respect, one that would not tolerate intruders. As I pressed onward, the sounds of the jungle enveloped me, an orchestra of chirps, growls, and rustles that seemed to mock my presence. Perhaps this was about more than just survival. Maybe it was about understanding the balance of life within this vast ecosystem. I had always felt a connection to nature, but now I was beginning to realize how little I truly understood it. The foliage closed in on me, and I felt the weight of the compass in my pocket. It spun erratically, a symbol of my disorientation. I needed to find my way back, but my instincts urged me to explore further. I felt a pull toward the unknown, a curiosity that was both thrilling and terrifying. Then I heard it again, the growl that had sent me into a panic before, now closer and more menacing. I froze, my heart racing. The sound was unlike anything I had encountered before, a guttural warning that seemed to resonate within the very earth beneath my feet. Suddenly, from the shadows, a figure emerged, tall and imposing, with a weathered face that spoke of years spent navigating the wild. It was a man, his skin dark and weathered, wearing a tattered shirt that blended seamlessly with the forest. He held a machete in one hand, its blade gleaming in the dappled light. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just someone trying to survive," he replied, his tone gruff but not unfriendly. He had an air of resilience, but there was a hardness in his eyes that made me wary. "What do you mean?" I pressed, stepping cautiously closer. He gestured toward the trees, his expression shifting to one of urgency. "This forest is not what it seems. It can give you life, but it can also take it away in an instant." His words resonated with me as I recalled the woman's warning. I realized that both of them were products of this unforgiving environment, survivors shaped by the very land that surrounded us. I was an outsider here, a trespasser in a world governed by rules I had yet to comprehend. "I'm just trying to find my way back," I explained, feeling a mix of desperation and hope. "I got lost while exploring." The man nodded, his expression softening slightly. "You're not the first, and you won't be the last. But the forest doesn't give second chances. You need to be careful." As we spoke, I noticed the scars on his arms, marks of battles fought against the elements and perhaps against other dangers lurking in the shadows. He was strong, yet his scars told stories of vulnerability, each one a reminder of the fragility of life in the jungle. "Do you live here?" I asked, curiosity getting the better of me. "Aye," he replied, his voice steady. "I was born here, and I've learned to respect its power. Many come seeking fortune or adventure, but few survive long enough to learn its lessons." His words hung in the air, and I felt a deep sense of unease. Maybe my desire for adventure had blinded me to the reality of this place. Perhaps it was about survival, but I still didn't know how much I was willing to sacrifice to stay alive. Before I could respond, a rustle echoed from the trees, and the man's expression shifted from one of calm to alertness. "We need to move. It's not safe here." I followed him as he led the way, my heart pounding. We navigated through the dense foliage, the sounds of the jungle amplifying with each step. As we walked, I could feel the forest shifting around us, almost as if it were alive, reacting to our presence. "Why do you stay?" I asked, trying to understand his motivations. "Why not leave this place?" He paused for a moment, contemplating my question. "Because I've learned that leaving doesn't mean escaping. The forest is a part of me, just as I am a part of it. You can't run from yourself." His words struck a chord deep within me, echoing the internal conflict I had been grappling with since I set foot in the jungle. I had come seeking adventure, but perhaps I was also running from something that lurked in the shadows of my own life. As the sun began to set, the light dimmed, and the jungle transformed. The vibrant colors faded into shades of gray, and the sound shifted to a haunting symphony of nocturnal creatures awakening. I felt the tension in the air, a palpable energy that made my skin prickle. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice low. "The night brings dangers that are unseen during the day." I nodded, my heart racing as I followed him deeper into the shadows. The forest felt alive, thrumming with a rhythm that echoed my own heartbeat. The fear that had once paralyzed me began to morph into a strange exhilaration. I was no longer just an observer. I was part of this world, if only for a moment. As we moved, I caught glimpses of him, his eyes reflecting the faint light, his posture poised and alert. He was a contradiction, a man hardened by the jungle, yet deeply connected to it. He was a protector, yet he carried the weight of a burden I could not yet comprehend. We reached a small clearing, a pocket of space where the moonlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows. The man stopped, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond. "This is where I come to listen," he said softly. "To the forest. It speaks if you're willing to hear." I stood beside him, my breath catching as I strained to listen. The sounds of the jungle swirled around us, but amid the cacophony, I felt a whisper, a subtle call that seemed to beckon me closer. It was as if the forest was alive, sharing its secrets, revealing the interconnectedness of all things. In that moment, I understood that the Amazon was not just a backdrop for my adventure. It was a living entity, a force to be reckoned with. The beauty I had once cherished now felt like a mask, hiding a complexity that demanded respect and understanding. As I stood in the clearing, I realized that my journey was not just about exploring the wilderness. It was about confronting my own fears and discovering the lessons hidden within the shadows. The man beside me was not just a stranger. He was a guide, a mentor navigating the intricacies of survival in a world that thrived on uncertainty. Perhaps we were all just trying to find our way in the dark, grappling with our contradictions and the shadows that lurked within us. The jungle around us pulsed with a life of its own, a vibrant yet menacing tapestry woven with shadows and sounds. As I followed the man deeper into the forest, I felt the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. Each step forward led me further from safety and deeper into a world fraught with danger. We had been walking for hours, the sun long gone, replaced by the haunting glow of the moon filtering through the trees. It was in this twilight, amid the cacophony of nocturnal creatures, that we stumbled upon a small encampment. A fire flickered, illuminating the faces of a group of people huddled together. They looked weary and worn, their eyes reflecting the flickering flames, but there was something unsettling about their presence. The man turned to me, his expression serious. "These are the ones I warned you about," he said quietly. "They've lost their way, guided by greed and desperation." I peered into the circle, noting the makeshift gear and the weapons they carried. It was clear they were not here to appreciate the beauty of the Amazon. They were here to exploit it. The sight stirred something within me, igniting a conflict I hadn't anticipated. I felt a moral dilemma rising to the surface. Should I intervene, or should I remain a passive observer in a world that operated by its own rules? "What do we do?" I asked, glancing at him. "We need to keep moving," he replied, his voice steady. "They're dangerous, and they won't hesitate to harm anyone who stands in their way." But as we turned to leave, one of the men from the encampment spotted us. "Hey, you there!" he shouted, standing up abruptly. The others followed suit, eyes narrowing as they assessed us like predators sizing up their prey. My instinct screamed to run, but I hesitated. I could see the desperation etched on their faces, a stark contrast to the wild beauty surrounding us. "Wait," I called out, my voice trembling. "We don't mean any harm." The man who had first spoken stepped forward, his demeanor shifting. "You're in our territory. You should leave before things get ugly." I felt the tension escalate, the air thick with potential violence. My heart raced as I weighed my options. I could retreat, leaving the group to their fate, or I could try to negotiate, to reason with them. But what would that mean for the forest, for the delicate balance of life I had come to respect? "Please," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "We just want to pass through. We don't want any trouble." The leader's eyes flickered with something, whether it was amusement or disdain, I couldn't tell. "Trouble? You're already in it, friend. This forest doesn't take kindly to outsiders." Suddenly the air crackled with tension, and I felt a wave of fear wash over me. I glanced at the man beside me, who remained stoic, his machete at the ready. I realized that every second of hesitation was a choice that could lead to violence or a chance to defuse the situation. "Maybe we can help each other," I suggested, an idea forming in my mind. "We know the forest is dangerous. You could use our skills to navigate it safely." The leader narrowed his eyes, clearly weighing my offer. "And why would we trust you?" "Because I know the jungle," I replied, urgency creeping into my voice. "I've spent years studying it. I can help you avoid the threats that lurk here." The man exchanged glances with his companions, their expressions revealing a mix of skepticism and intrigue. But before they could respond, a loud crash echoed from the depths of the forest, causing everyone to freeze. The sound was followed by a low growl, ominous and threatening. "Did you hear that?" one of the men whispered, his voice trembling. "Yes," the leader replied, his previous bravado slipping away. "We need to get out of here." But it was too late. The ground trembled, and a massive creature burst through the underbrush, its eyes glowing in the dim light. It was unlike anything I had ever seen, a monstrous beast with jagged teeth and a muscular frame, clearly agitated by our presence. Panic erupted in the camp as the group scrambled for their weapons. "Run!" I shouted, instinctively grabbing the man beside me. We dashed into the dense foliage, the sounds of chaos fading behind us as we maneuvered through the trees. As we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that my choice to engage with the group had set off a chain of events I couldn't control. The jungle was unforgiving, and I had drawn unwanted attention both from the men and from the beast that now hunted us. "Keep moving," the man beside me urged, his voice cutting through the panic. "We have to find higher ground." We sprinted deeper into the forest, branches whipping against my skin and roots threatening to trip me. The growls of the creature echoed behind us, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just out of sight. My heart raced, and I felt the weight of my decisions closing in around me. At last we found a narrow ledge that offered some elevation. We climbed quickly, my limbs trembling from exertion. As we reached the top, I glanced back, my breath hitching in my throat. The creature had stopped at the base of the cliff, its eyes locked onto us, a menacing promise that it would not relent. "What? Now?" I gasped, my heart pounding in my chest. "We wait," the man replied, his eyes fixed on the beast. "It won't come up here unless it's desperate." As we crouched in the shadows, the adrenaline began to wane, replaced by a chilling realization. I had put us in this position. My choice to engage with the men had led to this confrontation. Was my desire to help worth the risk? I couldn't shake the nagging doubt that perhaps I had acted too impulsively. The creature prowled below, its growls reverberating through the air. I felt a swell of guilt. I had wanted to forge a connection, to find common ground, yet my actions had only escalated the conflict. Perhaps I was no better than those who sought to exploit the forest, blinded by my own intentions. Suddenly, the beast lunged forward, snapping its jaws at the air, and I recoiled instinctively. I turned to the man beside me, searching for answers in his steady gaze. "What if it finds a way up?" I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. "It won't," he assured me, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of uncertainty. "But we can't stay here forever." As we crouched in silence, the tension thickened around us. I felt the weight of choices pressing down on me. Every decision I had made since entering the jungle seemed to ripple outward, affecting not just my fate, but the lives of those around me. Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed above the growls, and I looked up to see the woman from the clearing standing on a ledge above us. She had followed us, her expression a mix of concern and determination. "You shouldn't have engaged with them," she said, her voice carrying a hint of reproach. "Now you've brought danger to us all." "I didn't know," I replied, frustration bubbling to the surface. "I thought I could help." "Help?" she scoffed, glancing down at the creature. "You don't understand the jungle. It doesn't need our help. It needs to be respected." Her words struck me like a blow. I had thought I could navigate this world with my knowledge and good intentions, but perhaps I was merely a pawn in a game I didn't fully understand. The beast below let out another growl, and I felt the ground tremble beneath me. "We need to move," I urged, my voice rising in urgency. "It won't be long before it finds a way up here." The woman nodded, her expression shifting from anger to resolve. "Follow me. I know a way out of here." We scrambled up the ledge, the sounds of the jungle around us melding into a chaotic symphony. As we moved, I felt the weight of my choices bearing down on me. The conflict had escalated, intertwining our fates in ways I couldn't have foreseen. With each step, I grappled with the consequences of my actions, the choices that had led me to this moment. The jungle, once a playground of adventure, had transformed into a maze of moral dilemmas and ethical challenges. As we reached a narrow pathway, I glanced back at the man who had guided me through the forest. He looked back at me, his expression unreadable, and I knew that our paths had diverged. The bonds we had formed in the heat of the moment were now tangled in the chaos of survival. In that fleeting moment, I understood. The Amazon was not just a physical landscape. It was a battleground for choices, fears, and desires. As we raced through the underbrush, I felt the pulse of the jungle beneath my feet, reminding me that every decision would echo through the trees, shaping our destinies in ways I was only beginning to grasp. As we navigated the treacherous paths of the jungle, my thoughts drifted to my past, weaving memories into the fabric of our current predicament. Each step felt heavy with the weight of choices made long before I had set foot in the Amazon. The jungle's relentless energy mirrored my internal turmoil, and I began to recognize the subplots unfolding around me, each one reflecting the central theme of survival and the monsters we face, both within and outside ourselves. I recalled my mother's stories from my childhood, tales filled with creatures that lurked in the shadows, waiting to pounce on the unsuspecting. Monsters are real, but they wear many faces, she used to say. Sometimes they're the fears we carry inside. As I ran through the dense underbrush, dodging branches and roots, I realized that the true monsters I faced weren't just the beasts of the jungle, but also the fears and insecurities that had haunted me throughout my life. "Keep moving," the woman urged, pulling me back to the present. I nodded, focusing on the urgency of our escape. The growl of the creature echoed behind us, a constant reminder of the very real danger that lurked just out of sight. The pressure was mounting, and I could feel time slipping away as we raced against the ticking clock of survival. Our path twisted and turned, and just as I began to feel the strain of our flight, we stumbled upon a small, abandoned hut hidden among the trees. Its presence was a stark contrast to the chaos that surrounded us. The woman paused, her expression shifting as she surveyed the structure. "This was once my home," she said, her voice softening. "I left it behind, but it still holds memories." Intrigued, I stepped closer, peering inside. The walls were adorned with remnants of a life once lived, battered photographs, trinkets from the forest, and an old journal resting on a rickety table. I couldn't resist the urge to pick it up, flipping through the pages filled with handwritten notes and sketches of the flora and fauna. "This place," I said, glancing at her, "it feels alive, like it holds stories of its own." Her eyes glistened with unspoken emotions. "It does. This is where I learned the secrets of the jungle, where I discovered my purpose. But I had to leave when the forest became too dangerous. I didn't want to be consumed by its darkness." I felt a pang of empathy for her. Her story mirrored my own struggles, running from fears and uncertainties, seeking to define myself amid chaos. "You've found your way back," I said, trying to encourage her. "Perhaps it's time to reclaim what you lost." Before she could respond, a thunderous roar erupted from the depths of the forest, shaking the ground beneath us. The creature was closing in. "We don't have time for this," she urged, urgency creeping into her tone. As we sprinted away from the hut, I couldn't shake the feeling that our paths were intertwined, that our journeys of self-discovery were both a reflection of the other's struggles. The jungle had not only become a battleground for survival, but also a mirror, revealing the complexities of our fears and desires. We continued to run, the sounds of the jungle morphing into a chaotic symphony of danger. The pressure was mounting as we tried to escape the beast, but I felt a growing connection to the woman beside me. "What's your name?" I shouted, hoping to foster a bond amidst the chaos. "Lyra," she replied breathlessly, her focus unwavering. "And you?" "Alex." "Why did you come to the jungle?" she asked, glancing at me, her curiosity piqued. "I thought I could find adventure," I admitted, "but I'm realizing it's more about confronting my fears than I ever imagined." Her eyes flickered with understanding. "We all come here with different intentions, but the jungle forces us to face the truth about ourselves." Just then, we emerged into a clearing, and I caught sight of a group of people, those from the encampment we had encountered earlier, Huddled together, their faces pale with fear, my heart sank. They had been drawn into the jungle's web of danger just like us. Should we help them? I asked, torn between the urge to assist and the instinct to protect ourselves. Lyra's gaze hardened. They may be the reason we're in this mess. Trust is a luxury we can't afford right now. I felt the weight of my moral dilemma. The jungle was teaching me lessons I had never anticipated. But what if we can save them? What if helping them could help us? Just as I spoke, the creature's growl reverberated through the air, a chilling reminder of the ticking clock. There wasn't much time. The group noticed us, their eyes widening in a mix of hope and despair. "Help us!" one of them shouted, desperation lacing his voice. "We're trapped." I exchanged a glance with Lyra, and for a moment the tension hung between us. "We can't leave them," I insisted. "If we don't help, we're no better than those who exploit the forest." Lyra's expression softened, and I could see that she was wrestling with her own fears. "Fine," she relented, though her tone remained cautious. "But we have to be smart about this." Together we approached the group, the growls of the creature growing nearer. "What happened?" I asked, trying to assess the situation. "We were ambushed," one of the men explained, his voice trembling. "We thought we could mine the Acho resources, but the jungle fought back. Now we're surrounded." I felt a surge of determination. "We need to work together. If we band together, we might stand a chance against that thing." Lyra nodded, her fierce spirit igniting. "Agreed. We can use the terrain to our advantage." As we strategized, I noticed the fear in the eyes of the group members. Their desperation mirrored my own, and in that moment I realized that we were all facing our own monsters, both literal and metaphorical. The creature roared again, closer now, and the urgency of the situation intensified. "We need to move," I urged, and together we formed a plan to lure the beast away from the clearing. In the chaos of our escape, I caught a glimpse of Lyra's face, her determination shining through. "This jungle is a part of us," she said, her voice steady. "It's time we embraced that." As the creature charged, we led it on a wild chase through the underbrush, dodging branches and using the environment to our advantage. I felt the adrenaline coursing through my veins, the thrill of survival igniting a fire within me. In the midst of the chaos, I remembered my mother's words. The monsters we face are not just out there, they also reside within us. I was learning that confronting them required not just strength, but also connection and understanding. As we made our way through the jungle, Lyra and I worked seamlessly, together, each of us drawing from our experiences to navigate the perilous terrain. The bond we formed during this harrowing escape deepened, revealing layers of trust and resilience. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we managed to outsmart the creature, leading it to a natural pitfall where it stumbled and fell. Exhausted but exhilarated, we stood together, the group around us breathing heavily, processing the adrenaline of survival. In that moment of triumph, I felt a profound sense of clarity. The jungle had challenged us, forcing us to confront our fears and forge connections that transcended our individual struggles. As we caught our breath, I turned to Lyra. "We did it. Together." She smiled, a spark of hope igniting in her eyes. "Yes, but this is just the beginning. There's still much to learn from this place." I knew she was right. The jungle held secrets that went beyond survival. It was a teacher of resilience, of connection, and of embracing the complexities of our own humanity. As the group began to regroup, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This experience had transformed me, revealing the strength in vulnerability, the power of unity, and the importance of facing our inner demons head-on. The jungle was alive, a symphony of rustling leaves and distant calls echoing through the thick underbrush. With every step, the oppressive heat weighed down on us, pressing in from all sides like the very fears we had been grappling with. It felt as though the forest itself was a character in our story, an entity observing our struggles, reflecting our internal conflicts back at us. Just as we began to regroup and strategize after our narrow escape from the creature, the atmosphere shifted. The air thickened, and the vibrant greens of the foliage seemed to darken, casting long, eerie shadows that danced ominously around us. The once familiar sounds of the jungle morphed into a cacophony of unsettling whispers, and I could feel a palpable tension building. "Do you feel that?" Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes darting nervously from tree to tree. "I do," I replied, my heart racing. The forest was changing, and I sensed that something significant was about to occur. The feeling was akin to standing on the precipice of a cliff, the ground beneath us shifting, ready to give way at any moment. As we gathered close, I saw a flicker of movement in the shadows. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust, and then I noticed the group's leader, the one who had initially dismissed us in the encampment. He was standing apart, his expression hardening as he stared into the depths of the jungle. "Something's coming," he said, his voice low and filled with dread. Before I could respond, the ground shook beneath us, a low rumble that sent vibrations through my bones. We exchanged worried glances, the gravity of our situation sinking in. The jungle was no longer a mere backdrop. It felt like a living entity, actively engaged in our fate. Then it happened. A massive figure emerged from the shadows, and my breath caught in my throat. It wasn't the creature we had escaped. It was something entirely different. A group of armed men, their faces obscured by masks, stepped into the clearing, weapons drawn and eyes glinting with malice. "Looks like we found ourselves some intruders," their leader sneered, stepping forward with a predatory grin. "Didn't think we'd have company out here." Panic erupted within our group. My heart raced as I glanced at Lyra, who stood rigid next to me, her eyes wide. The tension in the air was suffocating, the jungle around us suddenly feeling hostile and oppressive. "Stay back," I shouted, trying to project confidence. "We're not looking for trouble." The masked leader chuckled darkly. "Trouble's exactly what you found. You've been snooping around in places you don't belong." In that moment, the reality of our situation hit me hard. We were no longer just battling the dangers of the jungle. We were now in direct conflict with those who sought to exploit it. The stakes had risen dramatically, and the jungle, once a place of adventure, had become a battleground for survival. Without warning, the leader raised his weapon, and a shot rang out, echoing through the trees. Time seemed to slow as I ducked instinctively, adrenaline surging through my veins. The sound shattered the tense atmosphere, and chaos erupted. "Run!" Lyra shouted, grabbing my arm and pulling me into the underbrush. We darted away from the clearing, the sounds of gunfire and shouts ringing in our ears. The jungle, which had once felt like a sanctuary, now seemed to close in around us, branches clawing at our skin as we sprinted through the darkness. I could hear the men pursuing us, their voices laced with anger and determination. "Keep going," Lyra urged, her breath coming in quick gasps. "We can't let them catch us." As we ran, I felt a surge of emotions, fear, anger, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. I had thought we were united in our fight against the jungle's dangers, but now we were divided, caught between the wilderness and the greed of those who sought to exploit it. We stumbled into a narrow stream, the cool water splashing against our legs as we crossed. The sounds of our pursuers grew fainter, but I knew they wouldn't give up easily. We needed to find somewhere safe, a place to regroup and plan our next move. "Over there," Lyra pointed toward a thicket of dense foliage. "We can hide until they pass." We ducked into the underbrush, our hearts pounding as we pressed ourselves against the cool earth. The sounds of the jungle surrounded us, but now they felt different, more ominous, as if the trees themselves were watching, waiting for the next move in this deadly game. As we crouched in silence, I turned to Lyra, my mind racing. "What do we do now? They know we're here." Her expression was intense, her eyes filled with determination. "We fight back. We can't let them take what's ours." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "What do you have that they want?" "They're not just hunting us," she explained, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "They're after the resources of the jungle. They want to destroy everything that makes this place alive. A realization hit me like a wave. This wasn't just about our survival. It was about the very fabric of the jungle itself. The stakes had changed dramatically. If we didn't act, the beauty and life of this place would be lost to greed. Then, we have to stop them, I said, the fire of determination igniting within me. We can't let them exploit this land. Yes, Lyra agreed, her voice resolute, but we need a plan. We can't face them head on without knowing their numbers. Just then, a voice broke through the tension, echoing from the direction. We had fled. It was one of the armed men, calling to his companions. They can't have gone far. Split up and search the area. My heart raced at the sound of their footsteps drawing closer. We had to act quickly. The jungle around us felt alive, urging us to take a stand against the impending threat. It echoed my resolve, turning the trees and shadows into allies. As we crouched low, I glanced around, searching for anything we could use to our advantage. It was then that I spotted a fallen branch, thick and sturdy. We can use this to defend ourselves, I whispered, grabbing it and handing Lyra a smaller piece. Good idea, she replied, her voice steady as she gripped the makeshift weapon. But we need to draw them away, I nodded, formulating a plan. We'll create a diversion. I'll distract them while you find higher ground and get a better vantage point. Her eyes widened. Are you sure? It's too risky. I have to try, I insisted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. This is our chance to take back control. As the men's voices grew louder, I knew the time for hesitation was over. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. The jungle, once a place of adventure, had transformed into a battleground for the future of its very existence. With one last glance at Lyra, I dashed out from the thicket, shouting to draw their attention. Hey, over here! The men turned, their eyes narrowing as they spotted me. I sprinted deeper into the jungle, feeling the adrenaline surge as I led them away from Lyra and the others. The shadows of the trees seemed to stretch toward me, urging me on as I navigated the familiar terrain. As I ran, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me. The jungle was no longer just a backdrop, it was a living, breathing entity that mirrored my struggle. I was not just fighting for my life, but for the very spirit of the Amazon itself. The jungle felt different now, charged with an energy that crackled in the air, a palpable reminder of the chaos we had just escaped. As I sprinted through the dense underbrush, my heart raced, each beat echoing the urgency of our situation. I could feel the weight of the fallen branch clutched tightly in my hand, a makeshift weapon that seemed both inadequate and empowering all at once. My breath came in short, ragged gasps, the humid air thick in my lungs. The adrenaline surged through me, but it was accompanied by the creeping shadow of fear. I could hear the voices of the armed men behind me, growing more distant as I led them deeper into the jungle, but I knew they wouldn't stop pursuing me easily. Keep moving, I shouted to myself, pushing through the growing fatigue. Each step felt like a battle against the exhaustion threatening to overtake me. The underbrush snagged at my clothes, branches whipping against my skin, but I hardly noticed. My focus was singular, to buy time and create a diversion for Lyra and the others. As I ducked beneath a low-hanging branch, I glanced back, catching a fleeting glimpse of one of the men. His eyes were wild with anger, and I felt a chill run down my spine. The primal instinct to survive kicked in, and I quickened my pace, feeling the jungle close in around me. The shadows shifted, and I stumbled into a small clearing, the moonlight, illuminating the scene like a spotlight. I had a fleeting thought of how beautiful the jungle could be, even in the midst of chaos, but there was no time to dwell on that. I had to act fast. I spun around, positioning myself behind a large tree, trunk, my heart pounding in my chest. As the men entered the clearing, their voices filled with irritation and confusion. I held my breath, straining to hear their conversation. "Where did he go?" one of them growled, frustration lacing his voice. "Split up. He can't have gone." "Far!" the leader barked, his tone sharp and commanding. The tension hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I could feel my body trembling, not just from fear, but from the weight of the decision I had made to distract them. What if I couldn't lead them away? What if Lyra and the others were caught because of my choices? Then, a sudden noise broke. Through the stillness of the night, a rustle in the underbrush. I turned, peering into the darkness, my heart racing again. Had my diversion failed? Were they already onto me? The men shifted their attention, their eyes narrowing as they scanned the shadows. I gripped the branch tighter, my knuckles white, and waited for the right moment. I could feel the tension rising in the air, thick with danger. "Let's move," the leader commanded, his voice echoing in the stillness. "We'll find him, one way or another." Just then, I heard a shout from the direction where I had left Lyra and the others. "Alex, over here!" My heart sank. They had found them. I couldn't let that happen. I burst from my hiding place, adrenaline fueling my movements as I shouted, "Hey, I'm over here!" The men turned, their faces contorting with surprise. I dashed in the opposite direction, hoping to lure them further away. The sounds of pursuit followed me, branches snapping underfoot, and the rustle of leaves as they chased after me, anger fueling their every step. With every stride, I felt a mix of fear and determination. I was running not just for my life, but for the lives of those I had come to care about in such a short time. The weight of my choices pressed heavily on my shoulders, each heartbeat marking the seconds ticking away for Lyra and the others. I could hear the men gaining on me, their shouts echoing through the trees. "Get him!" one of them yelled, and I felt a surge of panic. I had to think quickly. I spotted another thicket ahead and darted toward it, hoping to lose them in the dense foliage. My breath came in sharp bursts, and my legs felt like lead, but I pushed forward, driven by the urgency of the moment. Then, unexpectedly, I stumbled over a root and fell to the ground, the impact jarring my body. Pain shot through my knee, but I forced myself to get up. I couldn't let them catch me. Scrambling to my feet, I pressed on, the adrenaline masking the pain. But as I ducked into the thicket, I found myself surrounded by the damp, rich smell of earth and leaves. I could hear the men approaching, their voices getting closer, and I knew I had to hide. I crouched low, forcing myself to be silent, my heart racing as I listened to their footsteps draw near. "Where did he go?" one of them muttered. Frustration evident in his tone. He can't just disappear. The fear in my gut was replaced by anger. I had put myself in this position to protect Lyra and the others, and yet here I was, hiding like a coward. I clenched my jaw, reminding myself that survival was the priority, but my resolve was slipping. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the jungle, and I felt the ground tremble beneath me. The noise was unnerving, and I glanced around, trying to discern its source. It was then that I noticed the shadows shifting again, not just from the men, but from something larger, a massive creature emerging from the depths of the jungle. The men froze, their eyes widening in shock and fear. "What the hell is that?" one of them exclaimed, backing away instinctively. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the creature. It was the same beast we had encountered earlier, the one we had narrowly escaped. It was now prowling closer, drawn by the chaos and commotion. I felt a surge of hope mixed with terror. This could be the distraction we needed. "Lyra!" I shouted, hoping she could hear me. "We need to regroup." As the creature advanced, the men turned to flee, panic taking hold. I took advantage of the chaos, using the confusion to slip out of the thicket and back toward where I had last seen Lyra. My heart raced as I sprinted through the trees, the sounds of the jungle amplifying the urgency of my flight. Finally, I burst into the clearing where I had left her and the others. Their expressions shifted from worry to relief as they saw me. "Alex!" Lyra shouted, her eyes wide with concern. "What happened?" "They found us," I panted, trying to catch my breath. "But I think the creature is distracting them. We need to move. Now." Without hesitation, Lyra nodded, her determination shining through. "Let's go. We can't wait for them to regroup." We quickly gathered the others, urgency propelling us forward. As we moved through the underbrush, I could feel the tension lingering in the air. The jungle had transformed into a battleground, and the consequences of our choices were weighing heavily on all of us. Every rustle of leaves made my heart race, and I could sense the fear in the group. We were united by the shared danger, but it also felt like a fracture had formed in our dynamic. The trust we had built was now overshadowed by the reality of our situation. As we navigated through the trees, I caught a glimpse of Lyra's face. Her expression was a mix of determination and anxiety. I could feel her questioning my decisions, wondering if my choices had put us all at risk. But I pushed the doubts aside, focusing on survival. We pressed on, moving deeper into the jungle, each step heavy with the weight of our fears. The sounds of the creature and the men faded into the distance, but I knew it wasn't over. The jungle was a living, breathing entity, and it would not let us escape easily. In the quiet moments between our hurried breaths, I felt the gravity of our situation. This was no longer just about me or Lyra. It was about the survival of everyone involved. The choices we made now would echo through the jungle and shape our fates. As we continued, the shadows loomed larger, and the jungle felt more alive than ever. We had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The repercussions of our actions would ripple through our lives, and I could only hope we would find a way to navigate the storm ahead. The jungle felt different now. Each step I took was imbued with an awareness that hadn't existed before. The vibrant greens, once merely a backdrop to our struggles, now pulsed with life, echoing the resilience that had begun to grow within me. I moved with a sense of purpose, my heart steadying as I reflected on the chaos we had just escaped. As we continued deeper into the jungle, the air thick with humidity, I could feel the weight of our recent experiences pressing down on me. The fear that had gripped my heart during our encounters with both the armed men and the monstrous creature had transformed into something more potent: determination. I realized that courage wasn't about the absence of fear. It was about moving forward despite it. Lyra walked beside me, her expression resolute. I noticed the way her shoulders squared as we faced the unknown together, and it inspired me. Her presence reminded me that we were not alone in this fight. The bonds we had forged through adversity were becoming our greatest strength. Suddenly, the path narrowed, forcing us to navigate through a dense thicket. I felt the branches clawing at my skin, but instead of flinching back, I pressed forward, pushing through with renewed vigor. Each bruise and scrape felt like a badge of honor, a testament to our resolve. "Watch your step," Lyra called out, her voice steady. I caught a glimpse of her determination shining through, and it fueled my own. We were no longer just surviving. We were evolving, adapting to the challenges that lay ahead. As we emerged from the thicket, the landscape opened up into a breathtaking vista, a massive waterfall cascading down jagged rocks, its mist rising like smoke in the sunlight. I paused for a moment, taking in the beauty before us, but the tranquility was short-lived. We were still in danger, and the jungle wasn't done testing us. "Over there," one of the group members shouted, pointing to a makeshift camp in the distance. It was a stark reminder that others had been here, and not all who ventured into the jungle had noble intentions. "Let's check it out," I suggested, my heart racing. I felt a surge of responsibility to protect our group, to ensure that we didn't fall prey to the same fate that had befallen so many before us. As we approached the camp, I could feel tension rising among us. I scanned the area, my instincts on high alert. The remnants of previous occupants littered the ground, discarded gear, empty cans, and signs of hasty departure. It was clear that something had gone wrong. "This place gives me the creeps," one of the others said, shivering despite the heat. "Stay close," I instructed, my voice steady. The fear was palpable, but I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I was no longer the scared newcomer. I was a protector, a leader. We cautiously made our way through the camp, searching for any signs of life. My senses were heightened. I could hear the rustle of leaves, the distant calls of wildlife, and the soft gurgle of the nearby waterfall. But there was something else, an underlying tension that came from the uncertainty of what lay ahead. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the jungle, sending a shockwave of fear through our group. I turned to see a large tree had fallen nearby, its splintered trunk blocking our path. The ground shook beneath us, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. "Everyone back!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the chaos. I could see the panic in their eyes, and instinctively, I stepped forward. "We need to stay calm. We'll find a way around." As we moved to the side, I felt a surge of responsibility wash over me. This was a moment that could define us. Either we crumbled under pressure, or we rose to the challenge. I chose the latter. We navigated the fallen tree, and as we did, I caught Lyra's gaze. There was a flicker of admiration in her eyes, a recognition of the change that had taken place within me. I felt it too, a growing confidence that pushed me forward. Once we were clear, I took a moment to assess the situation. "We need to find a safer path," I said, scanning the surroundings. "Let's head toward the waterfall." The sound of rushing water could mask our movements. As we moved toward the waterfall, my mind raced with the possibilities. Every step was a reminder of how far I had come since entering the jungle. I was no longer just a wanderer seeking adventure. I was an active participant in a fight for survival. When we reached the waterfall, the roar of the water was deafening, drowning out everything else. The sight was breathtaking, but it was also a stark reminder of the power of nature, a power we had to respect and navigate carefully. "Let's take a moment to regroup," I suggested, raising my voice to be heard over the sound of the waterfall. "We need to plan our next steps." As we huddled together, I noticed the weariness in everyone's eyes. The stress of our journey was taking its toll, but I could also see a flicker of hope. We had faced danger together, and despite the odds, we were still standing. "We can't give up," I urged, looking each person in the eye. "The jungle is testing us, but we are stronger together. We have to believe we can overcome this." Lyra nodded, her determination shining through as she stepped forward. "We've come too far to turn back now. We need to find a way to outsmart those men and protect this place." Her words resonated with the group, igniting a sense of purpose that had been lacking. I felt a swell of pride as I watched them rally around her. This was the power of unity, the strength that came from shared experiences. As we made our plans, a sense of clarity washed over me. I understood that growth doesn't come from comfort, it comes from facing challenges head-on. Each obstacle we encountered was an opportunity to learn, to adapt, and to become stronger. Suddenly, a shout broke through our discussions. "Look!" One of the group members pointed toward a narrow path leading up the rocks beside the waterfall. "We could climb up there." I peered at the path, assessing its viability. It looked steep and treacherous, but the thought of gaining higher ground was enticing. "Let's do it," I decided, feeling a surge of determination. If we can get a better vantage point, we might be able to spot those men before they find us again. We began our ascent, the rocks slick with moisture and the spray from the waterfall soaking our clothes. With every step, I felt the adrenaline pumping through my veins, and I focused on the climb ahead. As we reached the top, the view was breathtaking, an expansive vista of the jungle stretching out before us. But with the beauty came the realization of our vulnerability. We had climbed higher, but we were still surrounded by danger. "Now what?" Lyra asked, scanning the horizon. "Now we watch and wait," I replied, my heart pounding with anticipation. "We need to be ready for anything." As we settled in, I felt a sense of camaraderie building among us. Each of us had faced our fears, stepping beyond our comfort zones, and it was empowering. I no longer felt like an outsider in this jungle. I was a part of something bigger. In that moment, I understood that growth is not a destination, but a journey. The challenges we faced had shaped me, revealing strengths I didn't know I possessed. I was learning to navigate not only the jungle, but also the complexities of human connection. As we took our positions, the jungle around us felt alive. a reminder of the delicate balance we were fighting to protect. I knew that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. The bonds we had forged in the heat of our struggles were unbreakable, and they would guide us as we navigated the path forward. The roar of the waterfall faded into a distant thunder. As we settled on the rocky ledge, our hearts pounding with anticipation. The jungle sprawled out below us, a sprawling green tapestry dotted with shadows, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down. We had come too far to turn back now, and every instinct screamed that we were on the brink of something. Monumental. Keep your eyes peeled, I instructed, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. They'll be looking for us. Lyra nodded, her focus sharp. The last few days had transformed her from a reluctant ally into a fierce warrior, and I felt a swell of pride at how far we had come together. The bond we had forged amidst chaos had become our greatest weapon. As we scanned the horizon, the air shifted, thick with tension. I could sense that something was brewing beneath the surface, a storm of danger and revelation that was about to break. The jungle, once a chaotic entity, now felt like a coiled spring, ready to unleash its fury. Suddenly, a crackle of branches echoed from below. My heart raced as I leaned closer to the edge, straining to see through the dense foliage. There they were, the armed men, moving with purpose, their faces set in grim determination. They were searching, and I could feel the adrenaline peak in my chest. "Do you see them?" Lyra whispered, her eyes wide. "Yes," I replied, my voice low. "They're coming this way." As the men drew closer, I could feel the tension rise. We needed a plan, and we needed it fast. I glanced at Lyra, who was already formulating ideas as she surveyed the terrain. "We could create a distraction," she suggested, her voice steady. "Draw them away from the camp." "Good idea," I said, feeling a surge of hope. "But we need to be careful. If we give ourselves away, it could cost us everything." We quickly brainstormed, our minds racing with potential strategies. The stakes had never been higher, and the jungle felt charged with the electricity of impending confrontation. I could almost taste the tension in the air. As we prepared, I felt a rush of memories flood back, my earlier encounters with fear, loneliness, and self-doubt. The jungle had stripped me bare, forcing me to confront every shadow lurking within. And now, standing on the precipice of this moment, I understood that I had grown. I had transformed from a frightened wanderer into a leader willing to fight for what was right. Moments later, we executed our plan. Lyra and I made our way to the edge of a nearby thicket, while the others positioned themselves behind the rocks, ready to ambush. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I was ready to face whatever came next. "On my mark," I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. 3, 2, 1, now! We threw rocks into the underbrush, the noise echoing through the jungle. The men turned, startled, and I felt a flicker of triumph as they moved to investigate. "Go, go, go," Lyra urged, and we scrambled back toward the safety of the rocks, adrenaline propelling us forward. The tension in the air snapped like a taut wire, and the thrill of the chase surged through me. As we regrouped, I could see the determination in everyone's eyes. We were ready to face whatever came next. But just as I thought we had the upper hand, a chilling realization struck me. "Wait," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos. "What if they're not just after us? What if they're trying to destroy the jungle itself?" Lyra's eyes widened, and I could see the gears turning in her mind. "You're right. They're after the resources, but they might also be looking to eliminate anyone who stands in their way." The implications of my words hung heavy in the air. We were not just fighting for our lives, we were fighting for the very essence of the jungle. "Then we need to confront them, but on our terms," I said, my voice firm. "We can't let them exploit this land." Just then, a rustle in the underbrush caught my attention. I turned, expecting to see one of the armed men, but instead, I was met with a shocking sight. A massive creature, larger than any I had encountered before, emerged from the shadows. Its eyes glinted with intelligence, and I felt a surge of fear and awe. "It's the beast!" I shouted. and the others turned, their expressions mirroring my shock. But then, something unexpected happened. The creature seemed to sense our presence, its gaze shifting from us to the men below. It let out a low growl, its massive body tensing as it prepared to defend its territory. And then it struck. The creature charged down the slope with a force that sent shockwaves through the ground. The men below scrambled in panic, their bravado evaporating as they realized the true danger they faced. I felt a rush of exhilaration watching as the beast unleashed its wrath on those who sought to exploit the jungle. "Now's our chance," Lyra shouted, her voice filled with adrenaline. "We need to move!" We followed her lead, charging down the slope toward the chaos. The sounds of the waterfall became a distant roar as we plunged into the fray, the air thick with the scent of fear and urgency. As we reached the clearing, I spotted one of the armed men, his face twisted in terror as he stumbled backward, caught between the creature and a tree. My heart raced as I realized this was a pivotal moment, not just for us, but for the jungle itself. In that instant, I felt a surge of clarity. The true enemy isn't just the men, I thought, a revelation washing over me. It's the greed that drives them. The jungle was alive, a character unto itself, fighting back against the forces that sought to destroy it, and we were a part of that fight. I moved toward the chaos, my heart pounding as I prepared to confront the men. The creature roared, a primal sound that echoed through the trees, and I felt the energy of the jungle surge around us. "Together," I shouted, rallying our group, "we fight for the jungle, for our survival." With renewed purpose, we charged forward, ready to face the confrontation head on. The stakes were higher than ever, and I could feel the tension mounting as we prepared for the final showdown. The jungle had tested us, and now we would rise to the challenge. In that moment, I realized that the true test of our resolve was not just in facing the men, but in embracing the spirit of the jungle itself. We were not just fighting for our lives. We were fighting to protect a world that had become our home. As the beast unleashed its fury and we forged ahead, I knew we were on the brink of something monumental. The climax was approaching, and I could feel the pulse of the jungle quickening, urging us forward into the heart of the battle. The jungle exploded into chaos as we charged down the slope, the roar of the creature harmonizing with our battle. Cries. The men, once so confident, were now scrambling in fear, their eyes wide with terror as the massive beast lunged at them. I felt a surge of adrenaline propelling me forward into the fray. "Together," I shouted, rallying our group. The sheer magnitude of the moment engulfed us, and I could see the fear in my companion's eyes transforming into a fierce resolve. We were no longer passive players in this game. We were warriors, fighting not just for our lives, but for the jungle we had come to love. As I approached, I spotted the leader of the armed men, his face twisted in panic. He was backing away from the creature, stumbling over roots and rocks as he tried to escape. A primal instinct surged within me. This was my chance to confront the true enemy, the greed that had driven him into the heart of the jungle. "Stop!" I yelled, my voice cutting through the chaos. The creature paused, its eyes locked onto me, and for a moment I felt a strange connection, as if the jungle itself was listening. The men hesitated, glancing between me and their leader, who was now cornered against a tree. "What do you want?" he spat, his bravado faltering. "You think you can intimidate us with some animal?" I stepped closer, my heart racing. "This isn't just an animal. This is a guardian of this land, a symbol of everything you seek. To destroy? You think you can take from this jungle without consequence? Look around you." The leader's expression shifted, a flicker of doubt breaking through his anger. But before he could respond, the creature lunged forward, its massive form crashing into the ground beside him. The men scattered, their fear palpable. Without thinking, I lunged forward, grabbing a fallen branch and brandishing it, ready to defend myself if necessary. The jungle had taught me to be fierce, to confront my fears head on. I was not the same person who had entered this place. I had transformed. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice rising above the chaos. "You will leave this place, or you will face the consequences." The armed men exchanged glances, their resolve wavering. The creature roared again, a primal sound that echoed through the trees, and I felt the weight of the moment settle upon me. I was no longer just fighting for survival, I was fighting for a belief, for the very essence of the jungle. "Go," I urged, pointing toward the path we had taken. "Leave now and never return." To my surprise, the leader hesitated. "You think you can scare us off?" he sneered, but there was a tremor in his voice. And then, in an unexpected twist, one of his men stepped forward, his face pale with fear. "I can't do this anymore. This isn't right." He turned and bolted into the trees, disappearing. Into the jungle. The leader's bravado crumbled. "You coward," he shouted, but it was too late. The remaining men followed suit, their confidence shattered. They turned and ran, the jungle swallowing them whole. As they fled, I felt a rush of triumph mixed with disbelief. The guardian of the jungle let out a final echoing roar, and I turned to face Lyra and the others. They were staring at me, eyes wide with a mixture of admiration and relief. "I can't believe we did it," Lyra breathed, her voice filled with awe. But before I could respond, the creature turned its gaze toward me. There was an intensity in its eyes, a recognition that sent a shiver down my spine. In that moment I understood. The true battle was not just external, but internal. I had faced my fears, embraced my role, and emerged transformed. As the creature stepped back into the shadows of the jungle, I felt a deep connection to this land. It was a reminder that we were all part of something greater, intertwined with the very fabric of nature. And then, as if the jungle itself breathed a collective sigh of relief, I felt the weight of the moment settle in. We had not just survived, we had triumphed. In the days that followed our confrontation, the jungle felt different. The air was lighter, and the shadows no longer felt oppressive. We had reclaimed our space, and the presence of the armed men no longer loomed over us. But the battle was not over. It was merely a new beginning. Lyra and I took the lead in establishing a safe camp, determined to protect this land we had come to cherish. The others rallied around us, and together we began to lay the foundation for a new kind of existence, one that honored the jungle and its delicate balance. As we worked, we began to uncover the remnants of the camp the men had left behind. We found maps detailing plans for resource extraction, each line a stark reminder of the greed we had fought against. It was clear that our struggle had been part of a larger battle, one that extended beyond our immediate conflict. Determined to prevent further exploitation, we decided to reach out for help. We contacted local environmental groups, sharing our story and the evidence we had gathered. It was a risk, but we knew we had to act. Our voices were small, but together we could be heard. As we worked to raise awareness, I felt a sense of purpose settle over me. The jungle had tested us, but it had also revealed our strengths. We were no longer just survivors. We were advocates for a cause that extended beyond ourselves. In the evenings, we gathered around the fire, sharing stories of our journey. The bonds we had forged during our trials deepened, and I could see how each of us had changed. Lyra, once hesitant, had grown into a fierce leader. The others, too, had found their strengths, their voices joining together to create a chorus of resilience. But there was still work to be done. We knew the men would not stay away forever. As we prepared for the challenges ahead, I felt a sense of unity among us. We were stronger together, and we had become a part of the jungle's heartbeat. The days turned into weeks, and the jungle flourished around us. We worked to restore the land, planting trees and nurturing the ecosystem. With each passing day, the scars of our battle began to heal, and I could see the beauty of the jungle emerging once more. But beneath the surface, I understood there was still a lingering tension. The question of what would come next weighed heavily on my mind. Would our efforts be enough? Could we truly protect this land from those who sought to exploit it? As I stood at the edge of the waterfall, I felt the cool mist on my face and listened to the rush of water below. The jungle had become a part of me, and I was determined to fight for its future. Months later, as I watched the sun rise over the canopy, I felt a sense of hope. We had made strides in protecting the jungle, but the battle was far from over. Each day brought new challenges, and I knew we would have to remain vigilant. As I looked out over the trees, I couldn't help but wonder, what would the future hold for us? Would we be able to safeguard this land for generations to come? Thank you for joining me on this journey through the jungle. If you found this story engaging, I encourage you to reflect on the themes of resilience and connection to nature. Share your thoughts and insights with others, and let's continue the conversation about protecting our planet. If you're interested in more stories like this, click to explore the next adventure that awaits. You'll discover more about the power of perseverance and the beauty of nature's mysteries. Don't miss out.